Something that I found very strange about the play was the way in which it was written. Sometimes I had to stop and reread a section because I didn't understand who was speaking. For example, if it said mom or dad, I didn't know if it was referring to Elliot's father or his grandfather. I also had to go back and see who was writing the letter and who was reading it. For example, Elliot's father and grandfather were both narrating the same letter, but I had to make sure I understood who was the person writing and who was reading it. Two values that were represented were family and stoicism. Elliot said he wanted to be a Marine because his dad was, and also it was mentioned that he keeps a picture of his parents with him and he looks at it every day. The other value I said was stoicism, which, even though it's never mentioned, everything that all of the family members do who are in the military is very matter of fact. When Elliot's recounting his injury, he never says anything about the mental impact it had. He just said how he tried to put on the tourniquet and smoke a cigarette. And when Ginny is talking about what she did in the hospital, she says that it was just down to business, and she tried to keep as emotionless as possible. Reading with the pencil, I didn't realize there were very many female nurses like Ginny in hospitals in Vietnam. I didn't realize the Army was as integrated as it was during the 60s and 70s. So I looked up the Army Nurse Corps and I found out a lot more about the heroic women that served in the Vietnam War as well as the men. I even saw there's a memorial to women who gave their lives during the Vietnam War, which is in Washington, D.C., which helped me to understand what was going on a lot better as I realized that Ginny was seeing wounded soldiers who were just wounded several minutes before. It wasn't as if they were coming to a different country. The depiction of the American soldier I thought was interesting because some of it reaffirmed certain things that I knew already or have seen. The idea that the military is a family thing, people join because their parents were in it or their grandparents, was something that reaffirmed a belief that I already had. But it also challenged the idea that most American soldiers are drug-free, especially in the one scene where Elliot's mother and father were smoking weed in the hospital in Vietnam. I thought that it was very interesting that it was called a fugue. It's a music word I found out when I looked it up that refers to a subject where, in this case, it was the military, is introduced by one person, and then the story is woven by other people and their involvement in that same subject. I never heard the word before, but it perfectly defines what this play was like. I thought that the playwright's intention was to show how the times are changing, but the war is still fought by the same people. Elliot and his father both had almost an exact same experience with killing an enemy despite fighting in very different wars 50 years apart. My first question was, why do you think the playwright decided to write the play as a fugue instead of just centering on Elliot and then having a break to talk about his father and grandfather rather than weaving in and out? My second question is, do you think the play was harder to follow or benefited at all from writing it as a fugue as opposed to just writing it as a standard play? And do you think this added to or took away from the play? Thank you.